San Francisco, California. A Thursday afternoon that would change everything. Rain drummed against the windows of Cafe Luna like a melancholic soundtrack to the worst day of Camila Rodriguez Blake's life. She absently stirred her third cappuccino of the afternoon, watching droplets race down the fogged glass when she saw him. Jared Montgomery, her ex-fiancé of 2 years, strolling through Union Square with a stunning blonde hanging off his arm like an expensive accessory. The same blonde she'd seen in his Instagram photos for the past 3 weeks, always at romantic locations, always smiling like she'd won the lottery of life. Son of a bitch, Camila muttered, feeling her blood begin to boil. Jared hadn't just ended everything via text 3 months ago. I need space to grow, Cam. You understand, right? But now he was parading his new conquest at the exact cafe where they used to have their Sunday morning dates. Camila knew Jared since college at Berkeley. She knew what kind of man he was, calculating, charming when it suited him, and with an ego the size of the Golden Gate Bridge. He'd chosen this place deliberately. He wanted her to see. Not happening, she whispered to herself, watching Jared approach the cafe door. That's when her eyes met those of a complete stranger sitting 2 tables ahead. He was impossible to ignore. Dark brown hair tousled by rain, green eyes that seemed to hold secrets, and a corner smile suggesting he was amused by some private joke. He wore a charcoal sweater that hugged his broad shoulders in a way that should probably be illegal, and his long fingers were turning pages of a worn copy of 100 Years of Solitude. For a split second, their gazes locked. He raised an eyebrow, as if waiting for something. Jared was 10 feet from the door. Camila didn't think. She just acted. She shot up from her chair, crossed the cafe like a hurricane of determination and flowing dark hair, and literally threw herself into the stranger's arms. "Babe," she exclaimed loud enough for half the cafe to hear. "Sorry I'm late, traffic was impossible." To his credit, the stranger didn't push her away. Instead, his arms closed around her with unsettling naturalness, as if they did this every day. He smelled like fresh coffee and something musky, maybe sandalwood. "Of course, sweetheart," he replied in a deep voice that did something strange to her stomach. "I told you I'd wait as long as it took." There was a hint of an indefinable accent in his voice. Perhaps British, maybe Australian. Camila couldn't decide, but it was devastatingly attractive. Jared had stopped at the door, clearly confused. The blonde beside him whispered something in his ear, discreetly pointing at Camila. "Shit," Camila mumbled against the stranger's shoulder. "He's looking." "The ex?" he asked quietly, and she could feel the smile in his voice. "How did you—" "Lucky guess. May I suggest you kiss me now, for complete dramatic effect?" Camila pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. They sparkled with amusement and something else. Something that made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with Jared or revenge. "You're insane," she whispered. "Probably," he agreed, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear in an intimate gesture that felt rehearsed for years. "But you're the one who came to me, remember?" And then, because sometimes the universe has a perverse sense of humor, the cafe door opened and Jared entered with his perfect girlfriend shaking rain from his expensive coat. "Now or never," the stranger murmured. Camila looked once more into his green eyes, saw Jared approaching the counter in her peripheral vision, and made the second impulsive decision of the afternoon. She kissed him, and the world stopped. It wasn't a fake kiss. It wasn't a kiss for show. It was the kind of kiss that destroys carefully constructed plans and rebuilds reality from scratch. His lips were surprisingly soft, and when he deepened the kiss, Camila completely forgot why she'd run to him in the first place. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard. His eyes had darkened, and Camila had the disturbing feeling she'd just jumped off a cliff without checking if there was water below. "Wow," she whispered. "Yeah," he agreed, running his thumb across her lower lip. "Didn't expect that." "Camila?" Jared's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Camila turned, still in the stranger's arms, to find her ex-fiancé standing a few steps away, his expression somewhere between shocked and offended. "Jared," she said, trying to sound casual while her heart pounded like a war drum. "Hi. Are you okay?" Jared's eyes jumped between her and the stranger, clearly trying to process the scene. "Better than ever, actually," Camilla replied, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. The stranger's arm was still around her waist, solid and reassuring. The blonde appeared beside Jared, clinging to him like a perfumed blonde barnacle. "Jared, honey, aren't we going to be late for dinner?" "Right, Madison." Jared cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Cam, this is—" Camilla realized with horror that she didn't know the name of the man she'd just kissed like her life depended on it. "William," said the stranger, extending his free hand to Jared with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms. "William Ashworth." "Jared Montgomery," Jared replied automatically, shaking his hand with slightly more force than necessary. "Pleasure," William said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Camilla tells me so much about you." Camilla almost choked. This man, William Ashworth, was improvising like a seasoned actor. "Oh, really?" Jared raised an eyebrow. "That's odd. She never mentioned you to me." "Well," William said, pulling Camilla closer in a possessive gesture that made something molten spread through her chest. "Some things are too sacred to share, aren't they, darling?" Camilla looked at him, fascinated by the ease with which he'd assumed the role of devoted boyfriend. "Exactly," she managed to say. "William is very private about our relationship." "How long have you two been together?" Madison asked with genuine curiosity, clearly oblivious to the tension at the table. Camilla opened her mouth, but William was faster. 6 months, he said without hesitation. "We met at an exhibition at SF MoMA. Camilla was standing in front of a Rothko crying." "I was not crying," Camilla protested automatically. "You were." William smiled at her with a tenderness that seemed too real to be acting. "Little tears streaming down your face. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." Camilla's heart did a somersault. How had he invented such a specific and touching story in seconds? Jared was visibly uncomfortable now. "Well, you two seem very happy," he said, the word happy coming out like it tasted bad. "We are," William said, kissing the top of Camilla's head. "Extremely." "Well, we really need to go," Madison said, tugging Jared's sleeve. "It was lovely meeting you both." "The pleasure was ours," William replied politely. Jared hesitated for a moment, as if he wanted to say something more, but ended up just waving awkwardly before letting Madison drag him out of the cafe. Camilla and William stood in silence for several seconds, watching through the window as Jared and Madison ran through the rain toward a silver BMW. "So," William said finally, "that was interesting." Camilla suddenly realized she was still in his arms. She stepped back, feeling her face heat up. I'm sorry," she stammered. "I don't know what came over me. You must think I'm completely insane." "A little," William admitted with a smile, "but in the best possible way." Camilla laughed nervously, running her hands through her hair. "Seriously, thank you so much. You didn't have to do all that. The museum story, the way you lied shamelessly," he suggested, amused. "Improvised brilliantly," she corrected. "Where did all that come from?" William shrugged, picking up his book from the table. "I have an active imagination, and to be honest, I thought you needed a better story than 'I hugged a stranger to make my ex jealous.'" Camilla winced. "When you put it that way, it sounds even more pathetic." "Not pathetic," William said, approaching her again. "Human. We all do impulsive things when our hearts are hurt." The way he said it with such understanding and kindness made Camilla's eyes fill with tears. "Damn," she muttered, quickly wiping the corner of her eyes. "Sorry. It's just been a really tough day. Actually, it's been a really tough year." "Want to talk about it?" William asked gently. Camilla looked at him, really looked. Despite the absurd situation, there was something about him that made her feel safe, as if she could tell this stranger her secrets, and they would be safe with him. "I don't even know your real name," she said with a wet little laugh. "It's William. William James Ashworth," he said, extending his hand formally. "And you're Camilla?" Rodriguez Blake, she completed, shaking his hand. Camila Sofia Rodriguez Blake. And I'm officially the most embarrassed woman in San Francisco. Pleasure to meet you, Camila Sofia Rodriguez Blake, William said, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing her knuckles in a way so old-fashioned and charming that Camilla wondered if he'd stepped out of a Jane Austen novel. And for the record, far from the most embarrassed. I know at least 3 women who've done more embarrassing things this week. Impossible. One of them threw coffee on her own boss thinking he was flirting with her, when actually he was just being polite. Another sent a 15-minute voice message confessing her feelings to the wrong guy. And the third... Okay, Camilla laughed, feeling slightly better. Maybe I'm not the only person making questionable choices. Definitely not, William confirmed. And to be completely honest, it was the most interesting kiss I've received in months. Camilla felt her face heat up again. About that? You don't need to apologize, William said quickly. It was nice. More than nice, actually. They looked at each other for a moment, and Camilla felt that strange, unexpected chemistry pulling her toward him again. Well, she said, forcing herself to take another step back. I think I've caused enough drama for one day. Thanks again. Seriously, you saved my dignity. Anytime, William said, and it seemed like he really meant it. Camilla grabbed her purse and coat, hesitating for a moment. Is it weird to say I hope I see you again, considering we met in such a unconventional way? No weirder than the rest of this afternoon? William replied with that corner smile that did interesting things to her stomach. True, Camilla laughed. Well, goodbye, William James Ashworth. Goodbye, Camila Sofia Rodriguez Blake. She walked to the door, feeling his eyes on her back. When she reached the entrance, she couldn't resist and looked over her shoulder. William was still watching her, with an expression she couldn't interpret. Camilla waved one last time and stepped out into the rain, pulling up her hood. As she walked down the wet sidewalk toward the subway, she couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in months, Jared Montgomery wasn't the first thing on her mind. Instead, she was thinking about green eyes, an indefinable accent, and the disturbing fact that a fake kiss had felt more real than 2 years of relationship with her ex-fiancé. Camila Sofia, she murmured to herself, you're in trouble. And for the first time since Jared had ended everything, she didn't mind one bit. What Camilla didn't know was that tomorrow, when she arrived for her first day at the new job at the Ashworth Mansion in Pacific Heights, she would discover that the universe had an even more perverse sense of humor than she had imagined, and that William James Ashworth wasn't just a charming stranger with great improvisation skills. He was her new boss. Pacific Heights, San Francisco. Friday morning, 8:47 a.m. Camilla stood at the wrought iron gates of 2847 Broadway Street, staring up at what could only be described as a monument to old money and newer secrets. The Ashworth Mansion loomed before her like something torn from the pages of Architectural Digest, all clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and the kind of understated elegance that whispered rather than shouted its wealth. She checked her phone for the 3rd time in 2 minutes. 8:47 a.m. She was supposed to start at 9, but arriving early had always been her nervous habit. Better to pace outside like a lunatic than show up breathless and flustered. Get it together, Rodriguez Blake, she muttered, smoothing down her navy blazer for the 100th time. It's just a job. Personal assistant to some rich family. You've got this. The irony wasn't lost on her that after 2 years of Marcus constantly criticizing her lack of ambition, she'd landed a position with one of San Francisco's most prominent families within a week of their breakup. The Ashworths were practically royalty in Pacific Heights, old California money mixed with new tech fortune, the kind of people who had wings of museums named after them. Through the ornate gates she could see a circular driveway leading to the main entrance, where a fountain featuring some sort of abstract sculpture bubbled peacefully. The morning fog was just beginning to lift, revealing glimpses of the bay beyond the mansion's perfectly manicured gardens. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Sophia. First day, you're going to kill it. Just remember, rich people are weird but harmless, mostly. Text me if you need an emergency escape plan. Love you. Camilla smiled despite her nerves. Sofia Martinez had been her anchor through the Marcus debacle, showing up with wine and terrible Netflix movies every time Camilla's world felt like it was imploding. Having a friend who'd known you since freshman year at UC Berkeley was like having a human security blanket. At exactly 8:55, Camilla pressed the buzzer on the gate's intercom system. "Good morning," came a crisp, professional voice. "You must be Ms. Rodriguez-Blake." "Yes, that's me. I'm here for my first day." "Wonderful. Please come up to the main entrance. I'm Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, the house manager." The gates swung open with barely a whisper, and Camilla walked up the curved driveway, her heels clicking against pristine cobblestones. Up close, the mansion was even more impressive, a masterpiece of modern architecture that somehow managed to feel warm rather than cold, inviting rather than intimidating. The massive front door opened before she could knock, revealing a woman in her early 60s with silver hair pulled into an elegant chignon, and the kind of posture that suggested decades of dealing with both diplomats and difficult employers. "Ms. Rodriguez-Blake," Mrs. Whitmore said with a warm smile. "Welcome to the Ashworth residence. I do hope your commute wasn't too troublesome." "Not at all, thank you. And please call me Camilla." "Lovely. Come in, come in. We have quite a bit to cover this morning before Mr. William returns from his run." Camilla stepped into the foyer and had to consciously keep her jaw from dropping. The space was breathtaking, soaring ceilings with exposed beams, a grand staircase that curved gracefully to the second floor, and art that she was pretty sure belonged in museums rather than private homes. "Mr. William?" she asked, following Mrs. Whitmore through what appeared to be a living room that could house her entire apartment. "The youngest of the Ashworth sons," Mrs. Whitmore explained, leading her down a hallway lined with family portraits. "He's the one you'll be working with primarily. Brilliant mind for business, that one, though I suspect he inherited more of his grandmother's artistic temperament than he'd care to admit." They passed through what appeared to be a library that rivaled some university collections, complete with rolling ladders and leather-bound first editions. "How many people live here?" Camilla asked, trying not to gawk too obviously. "Currently, just Mr. William and his grandfather, Charles Ashworth. Though we have frequent visitors, his older brother visits from New York regularly, and his parents split their time between here and their place in Napa. Plus there's myself, the chef, the gardener, and now you, of course." Mrs. Whitmore stopped at a door near the back of the house and opened it to reveal an office that was somehow both professional and cozy. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined two walls. A massive desk sat positioned to take advantage of the garden view, and comfortable seating areas were arranged throughout the space. "This will be your office," Mrs. Whitmore said. "Mr. William's office is just through that connecting door, though he spends most of his time either in the study upstairs or in meetings downtown." Camilla ran her fingers along the edge of the desk, which appeared to be made from a single piece of walnut. "It's beautiful. What exactly will I be doing?" "Oh, a bit of everything, I imagine. Managing his calendar, handling correspondence, organizing his research materials. Mr. William is working on some sort of book, though he's quite secretive about the details. He's also involved with several charitable foundations and serves on multiple boards." Mrs. Whitmore moved to the desk and pulled out a leather portfolio. "Everything you need to know about the household is in here, along with important phone numbers and his current schedule." "A book?" Camilla asked, curious despite herself. "Something to do with art history, I believe. He has a doctorate from Oxford, you know. Could have stayed in academia, but the family business called." Mrs. Whitmore's tone suggested she had opinions about that decision. "Brilliant young man, though he works far too hard. Perhaps you can convince him to take an actual vacation." Camilla was flipping through the portfolio when she heard the sound of the front door opening, followed by footsteps and a voice calling out, "Eleanor, I'm back. Did our new assistant survive her first glimpse of the family madness?" Camilla's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice, that slight accent, the warm humor threading through the words. No, 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 no. The universe could not be this cruel. "Ah, perfect timing," Mrs. Whitmore said brightly. "Mr. William, come meet." The office door opened and William James Ashworth walked in, still wearing running clothes and looking unfairly attractive, despite being covered in a light sheen of sweat. For a moment, the world went completely silent except for the sound of Camilla's heart attempting to escape through her throat. William stopped dead in his tracks, his green eyes widening as they met hers. "You," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You," Camilla echoed, clutching the portfolio like a lifeline. Mrs. Whitmore looked between them with obvious confusion. "I take it you two have met?" she asked carefully. "You could say that," William said slowly, never taking his eyes off Camilla. "Though I didn't catch her last name yesterday." "Yesterday?" Mrs. Whitmore's eyebrows rose. "How delightfully coincidental." "Coincidental," Camilla repeated faintly. "Right. That's one word for it." William ran a hand through his hair, leaving it even more disheveled than the run had managed. "Eleanor, would you mind giving us a moment?" "Of course," Mrs. Whitmore said, though her curiosity was practically radiating from her pores. "I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything. Camilla, welcome to the family." She left, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Camilla and William stared at each other in silence for what felt like several eternities. "So," William said finally, "this is awkward." "Awkward?" Camilla's voice came out higher than intended. "Awkward is forgetting someone's name at a party. This is a cosmic joke? I was going to say a disaster, but sure, let's go with cosmic joke." William moved to the window, putting some distance between them, which Camilla appreciated since her brain seemed to short-circuit whenever he got too close. "When you said you had a new job," he began. "I didn't know it was with you. I mean, the agency just said the Ashworth family. It's not exactly an uncommon name." Camilla sank into one of the chairs, the portfolio forgotten in her lap. "Oh God, this is so embarrassing." "Why embarrassing?" "Because yesterday I literally threw myself at you and kissed you, and now you're my boss and there have to be rules about this sort of thing, and I probably just got myself fired before I even started." "Camilla." The way he said her name made her stop mid-ramble. "You're not fired." "I'm not?" "No." William turned back to face her, and the expression in his eyes was unreadable. "Though we do need to talk about yesterday." "Right, about that." Camilla took a deep breath. "Look, I want you to know that what happened at the cafe was completely out of character for me. I don't usually accost strangers or use them as props in my personal drama. And I definitely don't usually kiss people I don't know. Usually. Ever. I've never done anything like that in my life." William was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "The kiss," he said finally. "Was it just for show?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Camilla felt heat rise in her cheeks as she remembered the feel of his lips on hers, the way the world had seemed to stop spinning. She started, then stopped. Honesty had always been both her greatest strength and her biggest weakness. No, it wasn't. Something shifted in William's expression, a flash of satisfaction maybe, or relief. "Good," he said simply. "Good? Because if I'm being honest, it was the best part of my week." Camilla's heart did that jumping thing again. "William, I know," he said, holding up a hand. "Employer-employee relationship. Professional boundaries. Trust me, I'm aware of the complications. So what do we do?" William was quiet for another long moment, and Camilla found herself studying his profile as he looked out at the garden. Even in running clothes, he had the kind of presence that suggested he was accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. But there was something else too, a thoughtfulness that she found unexpectedly appealing. "We be professional," he said finally, turning back to her. "You're clearly qualified for this position, or Eleanor wouldn't have hired you. What happened yesterday? We can call it a moment of temporary insanity and move forward." "Temporary insanity," Camilla repeated. "Right. Unless what?" William moved closer, just a step, but it was enough to make Camilla's pulse quicken. "Unless you'd rather not work here. I'd understand if this situation makes you uncomfortable. Camilla thought about her empty bank account, her student loans, the fact that she'd been job hunting for 3 months before landing this position. She thought about Marcus and his constant criticism of her lack of direction. She thought about the portfolio full of opportunities sitting in her lap. And then she thought about Green Eyes and the way William had improvised an entire relationship history without missing a beat. No, she said firmly. I want this job. Need this job, actually. And you're right, we're both adults. We can be professional. Good, William said, though something in his voice suggested he wasn't entirely sure if it was good or not. So, Mr. Ashworth, Camilla said, standing up and extending her hand formally. I'm looking forward to working with you. William looked at her outstretched hand for a moment, then took it in his larger one. Welcome to the team, Ms. Rodriguez-Blake. The handshake lasted just a beat too long, and when their eyes met, Camilla saw something there that suggested being professional was going to be more challenging than either of them anticipated. Now, William said, finally releasing her hand, let me show you what you've gotten yourself into. He moved to his desk and pulled out several thick folders. I'm currently working on 3 different projects. There's the book Eleanor mentioned. It's about the intersection of art and politics in 1920s Paris. Then there's the foundation work. We fund arts education programs in underserved communities. And finally, there's the family business, which is real estate development, specifically historic preservation and adaptive reuse projects. William opened one of the folders, revealing architectural drawings and photographs. We buy old buildings that are about to be demolished and turn them into something useful, while preserving their historical significance. Camilla leaned over to look at the plans, inadvertently bringing herself closer to William. She caught another whiff of that sandalwood scent, mixed now with the clean smell of sweat and something uniquely him. This is fascinating, she said, studying a drawing of what appeared to be an old warehouse. What was this building originally? A chocolate factory from the 1890s. We're converting it into affordable artist studios. William pointed to different sections of the plan. The idea is to maintain the industrial character while making it functional for modern use. And this one? Camilla indicated another set of drawings. Former newspaper building. We're turning it into a mixed-use development, retail on the ground floor, offices above. As William explained the projects, Camilla found herself genuinely interested despite the weird personal situation. His passion for the work was evident in the way he talked about preserving history while creating something new. So my job would be helping coordinate all of this? Among other things, managing my calendar, organizing research materials, handling correspondence with contractors and city planning departments. Fair warning, it can be chaotic. I like chaos, Camilla said without thinking. Do you? Well, organize chaos. I'm very good at bringing order to complicated situations. William smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him since he'd walked into the office. Something tells me you're going to fit in perfectly here. They spent the next hour going over schedules and procedures, and despite the underlying tension, Camilla found herself relaxing. William was a good teacher, patient and thorough, and his enthusiasm for his work was infectious. It was only when Mrs. Whitmore knocked on the door to announce lunch that Camilla realized how much time had passed. All ready? William checked his watch. Eleanor, we've been working for 3 hours. Time flies when you're having fun, Mrs. Whitmore said with a knowing smile. Lunch is ready in the morning room whenever you're prepared. Actually, Camilla said, I should probably head out. Get settled at home, review all these materials. Nonsense, William said immediately. Stay for lunch. Consider it part of your orientation. I don't want to impose. You're not imposing. Besides, you need to meet my grandfather. He's the one who actually runs things around here. I'm just the hired help. Camilla doubted that was true, but she found herself nodding anyway. Okay, but just lunch. The morning room turned out to be a bright, airy space overlooking the garden, with French doors that opened onto a terrace. A man in his 80s sat at the table, impeccably dressed despite the casual setting, with silver hair, and the same green eyes that had gotten Camilla into this mess in the first place. "Grandfather," William said, "I'd like you to meet Camilla Rodriguez Blake, our new assistant." Charles Ashworth rose from his chair with old-world courtesy and took Camilla's hand. "Ms. Rodriguez Blake, what a pleasure. William tells me you're going to help bring some order to his chaos." "I'm certainly going to try, Mr. Ashworth. Please call me Charles. And may I say you have excellent timing. William has been driving poor Eleanor to distraction with his disorganization." "I am not disorganized," William protested, pulling out a chair for Camilla. "I have a system." "Your system," Charles said with obvious fondness, "consists of 17 different notebooks scattered across 4 rooms and a computer desktop that looks like a tornado hit it." Camilla found herself laughing. "That does sound familiar." "See?" Charles pointed a finger at his grandson. "She understands. I like her already." Over lunch, which turned out to be an incredible spread of grilled salmon, quinoa salad, and vegetables that definitely came from the mansion's own garden, Camilla learned more about the Ashworth family dynamics. Charles was clearly the patriarch, still sharp as a tack at 83 and deeply involved in all the family businesses. William's parents spent most of their time in Napa, running the wine side of the family empire, while his older brother managed the East Coast operations from New York. "And William," Charles said with evident pride, "is our Renaissance man. Oxford PhD, speaks 4 languages, can spot a fake Monet from across the room and somehow still finds time to make us money." "Grandfather," William said, clearly embarrassed. "What? I'm not allowed to brag about my brilliant grandson?" Camilla found herself studying William as his grandfather talked. There was obviously deep affection between them, but she also sensed something else. Pressure, maybe, or the weight of expectations. "What about you, my dear?" Charles asked, turning his attention to Camilla. "What's your background?" "Art history and business administration from UC Berkeley," Camilla replied. "I've been working in gallery management for the past few years, but I wanted to try something different." "Gallery management," Charles said thoughtfully. "Which galleries?" "Most recently the Martinez Contemporary downtown, and before that I did freelance work with several smaller spaces." "Ah, Maria Martinez's place, I know her work well. Excellent eye for emerging artists." "You know Maria?" "Oh yes, we've been friends for years. In fact, I believe we have several pieces from artists she's represented." Charles smiled. "Small world, isn't it?" Camilla glanced at William, who was looking at her with renewed interest. "You didn't mention the art background," he said. "You didn't ask. Besides, I thought you needed an assistant, not a curator." "I need both, actually." William leaned forward. "The book I'm working on requires a lot of research into art collections, auction records, things like that. Having someone with your background could be incredibly helpful." "See?" Charles said triumphantly. "Perfect fit. I told you Eleanor had excellent instincts." They finished lunch with Charles regaling them with stories about the art world in the 1960s, when he'd apparently been quite the collector. Camilla found herself genuinely charmed by the old man's wit and obvious affection for his grandson. It was only when they were walking back to the office that the awkwardness returned. "So," William said as they reached the door, "this is happening." "This is happening," Camilla agreed. "And we're going to be professional. Completely professional." "Good." William paused with his hand on the door handle. "Though I should probably mention that there's a charity gala next Friday night, the annual Arts Foundation benefit. I'll need you there to help manage logistics." "Of course, just tell me what you need." "It's black tie," William added, "and you'll be my +1. Camilla felt her stomach do something complicated. "Your +1? "In a professional capacity," William said quickly. "To take notes, handle any issues that come up, that sort of thing." "Right. Professional +1. "Exactly." They stood there for another moment, neither moving to open the door. "William?" Camilla said finally. "Yes?" "This is going to be interesting, isn't it?" William's mouth curved into that devastating corner smile. "Camilla," he said, I think interesting might be the understatement of the century. And as he opened the door and ushered her back into the office, Camilla couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, the universe's sense of humor wasn't entirely cruel after all, even if it was definitely complicated. The Palace of Fine Arts, San Francisco, Friday evening, 7:30 p.m. Camilla stood in front of her bedroom mirror, second-guessing every decision that had led to this moment. The black dress, borrowed from Sophia because her own formal wear budget was approximately zero, fit like it had been made for her, hugging her curves in all the right places before flowing into an elegant A-line that brushed just above her knees. The neckline was sophisticated without being scandalous, and the fabric had a subtle shimmer that caught the light when she moved. She looked good. Really good. Which was exactly the problem. This is a professional event, she told her reflection firmly. You are there to work, to take notes, to handle logistics, not to look like you're auditioning to be the love interest in a romantic movie. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Photo or it didn't happen. You better look absolutely stunning so I can live vicariously through you. Before she could lose her nerve, Camilla snapped a quick selfie and sent it back. Sophia's response was immediate. Holy shit, Camilla. You look like a goddess. William Ashworth is going to spontaneously combust. Have mercy on the poor man. It's a work event, Camilla typed back quickly. Sure it is, and I'm the Queen of England. Go forth and be accidentally irresistible. Camilla was still shaking her head at her friend's response when her doorbell rang. She grabbed her clutch, also borrowed from Sophia, and opened the door to find William standing in her hallway looking like he'd stepped off the cover of GQ. The black tuxedo was clearly custom-made, fitting his tall frame perfectly. His hair was styled but still looked touchable, and when he smiled at her, Camilla felt her carefully constructed professional resolve take a significant hit. You look, William started, then stopped, his eyes traveling from her face down to her dress and back up again. Christ, Camilla. Professional? She suggested hopefully. That's definitely not the word I was thinking of. They stood there for a moment, the air between them crackling with the tension they'd been so carefully avoiding all week. We should go, Camilla said finally, stepping into the hallway and locking her apartment door. Don't want to be late to your fancy charity thing. Right, William agreed, though he made no move toward the elevator. Though I should probably mention what? There might be photographers, society page types. If anyone asks, you're my assistant. Which is true. Of course, Camilla said, though something in his tone made her nervous. Why would anyone ask? William pressed the elevator button, avoiding her eyes. The Ashworth family tends to attract attention at these events. People might be curious about who I'm with. The elevator arrived and they stepped inside. In the confined space, Camilla became hyper-aware of everything about William. The way he smelled like expensive cologne, and something uniquely him. The way he kept adjusting his cufflinks. The way he was very carefully not looking at her. William, she said as they descended toward the lobby. Is there something you're not telling me? Several things, actually, he admitted. But nothing you need to worry about tonight. The elevator doors opened, and William placed his hand on the small of her back to guide her toward the waiting car. The touch was brief, professional, and sent electricity shooting up Camilla's spine. This was going to be a long night. The ride to the Palace of Fine Arts was filled with William briefing her on the key players they'd encounter. Board members, major donors, artists whose work the foundation supported. Camilla tried to focus on the information, but she kept getting distracted by the way the city lights played across William's profile. The most important person you'll meet tonight is Victoria Hawthorne, William was saying. She's the foundation's largest individual donor and has very strong opinions about everything. Noted. Strong opinions about what specifically? Art, politics, wine, the proper way to arrange flowers, whether hemlines should be above or below the knee. William glanced at her dress. She's going to love you, actually. How can you be sure? Because you're smart, beautiful, and clearly not impressed by money. Victoria respects authenticity above all else. The casual way he'd called her beautiful made Camilla's breath catch, but before she could respond, the car was pulling up to the venue. The Palace of Fine Arts at night was breathtaking, the classical columns and rotunda illuminated against the dark sky, with well-dressed guests streaming up the steps like something out of a movie. Photographers clustered near the entrance, their cameras flashing as recognizable faces arrived. "Ready?" William asked, offering her his arm. "As I'll ever be." They made their way up the steps, and Camilla was relieved when they passed the photographers without incident. Inside, the venue had been transformed into an elegant wonderland. Dramatic lighting, floral arrangements that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and servers circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. "William, there you are, darling." A woman in her 60s approached them, resplendent in midnight blue silk and enough diamonds to fund a small country. She had silver hair swept into an elaborate updo, and the kind of presence that suggested she was accustomed to being the most important person in any room. "Victoria," William said warmly, kissing her cheek. "You look stunning as always." "Flattery will get you everywhere," Victoria replied with obvious affection. "Now introduce me to this gorgeous creature you've brought." "Victoria Hawthorne, I'd like you to meet Camilla Rodriguez Blake." "Camilla, Victoria is the Foundation's guardian angel." "Ms. Hawthorne," Camilla said, extending her hand, "it's an honor to meet you. Please call me Victoria, and the honor is mine." Victoria's sharp eyes studied Camilla appraisingly. "Let me guess. Art history background, probably Berkeley or Stanford, excellent taste in fashion and smart enough to keep this one in line." Camilla blinked in surprise. "That's remarkably accurate. I didn't survive 40 years in San Francisco society by being unobservant," Victoria said with a laugh. "William, you've outdone yourself. Where did you find her?" "Actually," Camilla said before William could answer, "we met at a coffee shop. I was having a terrible day and William helped." Victoria's eyebrows rose with interest. "How deliciously romantic. I love a good meet-cute story." "It wasn't romantic," Camilla said quickly. "It was more like accidental." "My dear," Victoria said, patting Camilla's arm, "in my experience, the best romances always start with accidents." Before Camilla could protest further, Victoria was whisked away by another board member, leaving her and William standing awkwardly by the champagne table. "She seems nice," Camilla said, reaching for a glass to give her hand something to do. "She is. She's also a hopeless romantic who's been trying to set me up with someone for years." "Well, mission accomplished, right? Even if it's just for show." William's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Right. Just for show." The evening progressed smoothly for the next hour. Camilla found herself genuinely enjoying the conversations. The art world was small, and she discovered several mutual connections with other guests. William stayed close to her side, introducing her to key Foundation supporters and occasionally leaning in to whisper context about various relationships and politics. Every time he got close enough for her to catch his scent or feel his breath against her ear, Camilla had to remind herself that this was work. Professional. Nothing more. She was in the middle of a fascinating conversation with a sculptor about public art installations when she noticed William's entire body language change. He'd gone rigid beside her, his smile becoming fixed and artificial. "Excuse me," he said to the sculptor. "I need to steal Camilla for a moment." He guided her away from the group, his hand firm on her elbow. "What's wrong?" Camilla asked, concerned by the tension radiating from him. "Nothing's wrong, exactly. It's just—" William ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the careful styling. "My ex-fiancée just walked in." "Your what?" Before William could answer, a voice called out behind them. "William James Ashworth, you beautiful bastard." They turned to see a tall, striking woman approaching them. She had platinum blonde hair styled in a sleek bob, cheekbones that could cut glass, and was wearing a red dress that probably cost more than Camilla's car. She was also, obviously, devastatingly beautiful. "Hello, Sophia," William said carefully. "Don't hello Sophia me," the woman said, reaching up to kiss both his cheeks in a gesture that seemed too intimate for ex-fiancés. "I haven't seen you in months. And when I do, you're hiding across the room like I have some contagious disease." Sophia's eyes landed on Camilla, and her perfect smile became slightly less warm. "And you must be the flavor of the month," she said with the kind of sweetness that had poisonous undertones. "Sophia," William said sharply. "What?" "I'm just being friendly." Sophia extended a manicured hand to Camilla. "Sophia Blackwell. And you are?" "Camilla Rodriguez Blake," Camilla replied, shaking her hand and trying not to wince at the woman's grip. "How lovely. And how did you two meet?" Camilla glanced at William, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "At a coffee shop," she said. "Very romantic, actually. William was reading Garcia Marquez, and I couldn't resist a man with good taste in literature." It wasn't entirely a lie. He had been reading 100 Years of Solitude that first day. But something about Sophia's attitude brought out Camilla's competitive side. "How quaint," Sophia said. "William always did have a thing for the intellectual types, though I'm surprised he's moved on so quickly." "Quickly?" Camilla asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Oh, didn't he tell you? We only broke up 6 months ago. The engagement had been going on for 2 years. Sophia's smile was razor sharp. "But I suppose when you know, right?" Camilla felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. 6 months. William had been engaged 6 months ago, and he'd never mentioned it. Not when she'd been pouring her heart out about Marcus, not during any of their conversations this week. "If you'll excuse us," William said tightly, taking Camilla's arm. "We should find our table." "Of course," Sophia said. "Lovely meeting you, Carmela." "Camilla," she corrected automatically. "Right, Camilla. I'm sure we'll see each other again soon." William practically dragged Camilla away, finding a quiet corner near the silent auction tables. "I can explain," he said immediately. "Can you?" Camilla crossed her arms, trying to process what she'd just learned. "Because right now I'm feeling pretty stupid. Here I was, worried about professional boundaries, and you've been lying to me for a week." "I haven't been lying." "Omitting then. Same difference." Camilla shook her head. 6 months, William. You were engaged 6 months ago, and you let me pour my heart out about my breakup without mentioning that you'd just gone through the same thing. It's not the same thing." "How is it not the same thing?" William was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as if he was trying to decide how much to tell her. "Because," he said finally, "Sophia and I were never really engaged. Not in any way that mattered." "What does that mean?" "It means our families arranged it. It means it was about business connections and social expectations and everything except what it should have been about." William's voice was bitter. "I spent 2 years trying to convince myself I could make it work, and she spent 2 years planning a wedding that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with the social event of the season." Camilla studied his face, seeing pain there that she recognized. "What happened?" "I finally admitted that I couldn't marry someone I didn't love. Even if it disappointed everyone, even if it complicated business relationships, even if it made me the villain in her story." William met her eyes. "So yes, I know what it's like to have your life fall apart. I know what it's like to question everything you thought you wanted. And I know what it's like to wonder if you'll ever feel anything real again." The honesty in his voice made Camilla's anger deflate slightly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because," William hesitated, "because when I met you at that cafe, you were so real, so genuine. And for the first time in months, I felt like myself again instead of playing a role everyone expected me to play." "And you thought I'd judge you?" "I thought you'd see me differently, like everyone else does now." Poor William couldn't even make his arranged engagement work. Camilla wanted to stay angry. It would be easier, safer. But looking at William's face, seeing the vulnerability he was trying to hide, she found her resolve crumbling. "For the record," she said softly, "I think you made the right choice. Life's too short to marry someone you don't love." Something shifted in William's expression. Relief, maybe, or hope. "Does that mean you forgive me for not telling you?" "I'm considering it," Camilla said, "but you're going to have to earn it." "How?" Before Camilla could answer, the lights dimmed, and a voice announced that dinner was being served. Around them, guests began moving toward the dining area. "We should find our table," Camilla said. They made their way into the dining room, which had been transformed with dramatic lighting and centerpieces that looked like they belonged in a museum. Their table was near the front, with Victoria Hawthorne, several board members, and a renowned artist whose sculptures Camilla had studied in college. Dinner conversation flowed easily, with Victoria regaling the table with stories from her early days as a collector, and the artist sharing insights about his latest installation. Camilla found herself relaxing despite the earlier drama, genuinely enjoying the intellectual stimulation. It wasn't until the auction began that things got complicated again. "Our next item," the auctioneer announced, "is a weekend at the Ashworth family vineyard in Napa, including a private tour, wine tasting, and dinner prepared by their award-winning chef. Bidding starts at $5,000. Camilla watched as several paddles went up around the room, the price climbing steadily. "15,000, called a voice from across the room. "20,000, countered another bidder. "25,000. Camilla turned to see who had made the latest bid and felt her stomach drop. Sophia Blackwell was sitting at a table near the back, her paddle raised high and a triumphant smile on her face. "30,000, came another voice. "35, Sophia called immediately. Camilla glanced at William, who was watching the proceedings with a carefully neutral expression. "40,000, said the previous bidder. "50,000, Sophia announced, her voice carrying clearly across the room. The auctioneer looked around for other bids. "Do I hear 55? Silence stretched across the room. "Going once? Going twice?" 100,000. The voice was William's, calm and clear and absolutely final. A gasp went up from the audience. Even the auctioneer looked stunned. "Did I hear $100,000? "You did," William confirmed, not looking at Sophia. "Do I hear 110? Silence. Even Sophia seemed to realize she'd been outmaneuvered. "Sold to Mr. William Ashworth for $100,000. Applause erupted around the room, but Camilla barely heard it. She was staring at William, trying to process what had just happened. "Why?" she asked quietly. William turned to look at her, and the intensity in his green eyes made her breath catch. "Because," he said, "I couldn't stand the thought of her winning something that belongs to my family. That's a lot of money for spite." "It wasn't spite," William said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "It was something else entirely." Before Camilla could ask what he meant, Victoria Hawthorne was reaching across the table to grab William's hand. "That was magnificent," she said with obvious delight. "Absolutely magnificent. Though I suspect there's more to that story than family loyalty." "Victoria," William said warningly. "Oh, don't Victoria me. I've known you since you were 16, and I've never seen you bid on anything with that kind of passion." She turned to Camilla with sparkling eyes. "My dear, I think you've had quite an effect on our William." "I'm just his assistant," Camilla protested weakly. "Of course you are," Victoria said with a knowing smile. "And I'm just a harmless old lady who collects art." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More auction items, more conversation, more champagne. But Camilla found herself hyper-aware of William beside her, the way he leaned in when she spoke, the way his hand occasionally brushed hers when he reached for his water glass, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. By the time they were back in the car heading to her apartment, the tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. "So," Camilla said as they pulled onto her street, $100,000. "It's for charity," William said. "Tax deductible. That's not why you did it." William was quiet until the car stopped outside her building. The driver got out to open Camilla's door, but William caught her hand before she could exit. "Camilla," he said, his voice rough, "what happened tonight? The way Sophia talked to you. The auction. I need you to know that this isn't just about work anymore." Camilla's heart started racing. "William, I know all the reasons why this is a bad idea. I know about professional boundaries and power dynamics, and the fact that we barely know each other. But I also know that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that afternoon at the cafe. We agreed to be professional, Camilla said, though her voice lacked conviction. We did, and we've been doing a terrible job of it. William's thumb traced across her knuckles, and Camilla felt her carefully constructed defenses crumbling. What are you saying? I'm saying that tomorrow is Saturday. I'm saying that I have a weekend at a vineyard in Napa that I just bought for an obscene amount of money. And I'm saying that I'd like you to come with me. As your assistant? William's green eyes met hers, and the honesty in them took her breath away. No, he said simply. As the woman I'm falling for despite every rational thought in my head. Camilla stared at him, her mind racing. This was crazy. He was her boss. She'd known him for a week. It was everything she'd sworn she wouldn't do after Marcus. But looking into William's eyes, feeling the way her heart was hammering against her ribs, she realized that maybe crazy wasn't always a bad thing. Pick me up at 10, she heard herself say. William's smile was brilliant. Really? Really. But I have one condition. Name it. No more secrets. If we're doing this, whatever this is, I need honesty. Complete honesty. Deal, William said, bringing her hand to his lips and pressing a soft kiss to her palm. Though I should warn you, the complete truth about my family is complicated. How complicated? William's smile turned mysterious. Let's just say that tomorrow is going to be very interesting. As Camilla made her way up to her apartment, she couldn't stop smiling. She was probably making a huge mistake. She was definitely complicating her life in ways she couldn't even imagine. But for the first time since Marcus had destroyed her world, she felt truly alive. And if that wasn't worth a little risk, what was? Ashworth Estate Winery, Napa Valley. Saturday afternoon. The Ashworth Vineyard was nothing like Camilla had imagined. Instead of the ostentatious display of wealth she'd expected, the estate felt like something from a European fairy tale. Rolling hills covered in perfectly manicured vines, a stone manor house that looked like it had been standing for centuries, and an atmosphere of understated elegance that spoke of generations of careful cultivation. It's beautiful, she breathed, as William's Tesla wound up the gravel drive lined with ancient oak trees. Wait until you see the sunset from the terrace, William said, and something in his voice made her look at him more closely. He'd been unusually quiet during the drive from San Francisco, his usual easy confidence replaced by something that looked almost like nervousness. Are you okay? She asked as they pulled up to the main house. William turned off the engine but made no move to get out of the car. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you said you wanted complete honesty, how complete are we talking? Camilla felt a flutter of unease. William, you're starting to scare me. What aren't you telling me? Before he could answer, the front door of the house opened, and a woman emerged, tall, elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair, and the kind of natural beauty that suggested she'd been stunning in her youth. She was followed by a man who was clearly William's father, with the same green eyes and aristocratic features. My parents, William said unnecessarily. Who aren't supposed to be here this weekend? William James Ashworth, the woman called as she approached the car. You didn't tell us you were bringing someone. Because I didn't know you'd be here, Mother, William replied, getting out of the car and moving around to open Camilla's door. I thought you were in Florence until next month. Change of plans, darling. The restoration project finished early. William's mother turned her attention to Camilla with keen interest. And you must be the mysterious woman who has our William so distracted he forgot to mention his family might be in residence. Mother, William said warningly. I'm Camila Rodriguez Blake, Camilla said, extending her hand and trying not to feel intimidated by the woman's obvious sophistication. It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Ashworth. Please call me Diana, and this is my husband, Robert. She gestured to William's father, who stepped forward with a warm smile. Camilla, welcome to our home, Robert said, taking her hand with both of his. Though I have to say, William's been remarkably secretive about you. We only learned of your existence when Eleanor mentioned the new assistant. And even then, the way she described your rapport suggested there was more to the story. There isn't, William said quickly. Camilla is my assistant. She's here because he bought a weekend here for $100,000 last night and needed someone to help him enjoy it, Camilla interrupted, earning a sharp look from William. Diana's eyebrows shot up. $100,000? William, what on earth? It was for charity, Mother. It was to outbid Sophia Blackwell, Camilla added helpfully, enjoying the way William's jaw tightened. Sophia was there? Diana exchanged a meaningful look with her husband. How interesting. Can we please go inside? William asked, clearly wanting to change the subject. It's been a long drive. As they walked toward the house, Camilla found herself studying William's family dynamics. There was obvious affection between them, but also an undercurrent of something else. Concern, maybe, or the kind of gentle maneuvering that came from years of dealing with a stubborn family member. The interior of the house was as beautiful as the exterior. Rustic beams and stone fireplaces mixed with carefully chosen antiques and modern art. It felt lived in rather than formal, a family home rather than a showplace. I've put you in the blue suite, Diana said to Camilla. It has the best view of the valley. William, you're in your usual room, of course. Actually, William said, and Camilla could practically feel him steeling himself for something. We'll need just one room. The silence that followed was deafening. William, Robert said carefully, are you saying... I'm saying that Camilla and I are involved, romantically. William reached for Camilla's hand, lacing their fingers together. And before you say anything, yes, I know it's complicated. Yes, I know she works for me. And yes, I know we haven't known each other very long. But I also know that what I feel for her is real, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. Camilla stared at him, her heart hammering. This was not how she'd imagined this conversation going. They hadn't even kissed since that first day at the cafe, and now he was announcing to his parents that they were romantically involved. How long? Diana asked, her voice carefully neutral. A week, William admitted. A week? Robert's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. Son, don't you think... I think, William interrupted, that I've spent enough of my life doing what other people think I should do. I think I've been careful and rational and proper for 29 years, and look where it got me. Engaged to someone I didn't love and miserable half the time. William, Camilla said quietly, squeezing his hand. Maybe we should... No, he said firmly, turning to look at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. I'm done hiding how I feel about you. I'm done pretending this is just professional when every time I look at you, I can barely remember my own name. Diana cleared her throat delicately. Perhaps we should all sit down and discuss this like civilized adults. They moved to the living room, where a fire was already crackling in the massive stone fireplace. Camilla found herself on a comfortable sofa with William beside her, still holding her hand like he was afraid she might disappear. So, Diana said, settling into a wingback chair with the air of someone preparing for a lengthy interrogation. How did you two meet? Camilla looked at William, wondering how much of the truth he was prepared to share. At a cafe, William said. Camilla was having a difficult day and I helped. He let me use him as a fake boyfriend to make my ex jealous, Camilla said, deciding that if they were going for honesty, they might as well go all the way. I literally threw myself into his arms and kissed him without asking. Robert choked on his wine. Diana's eyes went wide. You what? Diana said faintly. It's not as bad as it sounds, Camilla said quickly. Well, actually, it's exactly as bad as it sounds. But William was very gracious about being accosted by a crazy person. I wouldn't say crazy, William said with a slight smile. Spontaneous, maybe. Refreshingly honest. Refreshingly honest enough to tell us that you bid $100,000 to spite your ex-fiancé? Robert asked. It wasn't spite, William said. Not entirely. Then what was it? Diana leaned forward, clearly fascinated despite herself. William was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on Camilla's hand. It was the moment I realized I was in love with her, he said simply. The words hit Camilla like a physical blow. She turned to stare at him, her heart racing. William, she whispered. I know it's crazy, he continued, meeting her eyes. I know it's too fast and too complicated and probably terrifying for you. But when I saw Sophia trying to claim something that belonged to my family, all I could think was that I wanted to bring you here. I wanted to show you this place that means everything to me. I wanted to see you in the vineyard at sunset and wake up with you in my childhood bedroom and introduce you to my parents as the woman I'm falling for. Oh my, Diana murmured. Camilla felt tears prick at her eyes. You're right, she said shakily. It is terrifying. But, William asked hopefully, but I'm falling for you too. Despite every rational thought in my head, despite the fact that you're my boss and we've known each other for a week and this is the definition of a terrible idea. She took a shaky breath. I think I'm falling in love with you too. William's smile was brilliant. Before Camilla could react, he was kissing her, soft and sweet and full of promise. It wasn't like that first desperate kiss at the cafe. This was better. This was real. Well, Robert said after they broke apart, I think we need more wine. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of conversation and laughter. Diana and Robert, once they got over their initial shock, proved to be warm and welcoming hosts. They shared stories about the vineyard, about William's childhood, about the family business that had started with Robert's grandfather and now spanned multiple industries. William was always the dreamer, Diana said, as they sat on the terrace, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. Even as a child, he was more interested in books and art than business. We worried he'd never find his place in the family empire. And now? Camilla asked. Now I think he's found something better, Robert said, raising his glass in a toast. To following your heart, even when it leads you somewhere unexpected. They clinked glasses as the sky exploded in shades of gold and pink. Camilla felt William's arm tighten around her waist, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. It was only later, after dinner and more wine and stories that had Camilla laughing until her sides hurt, that she learned about the complication that would change everything. They were walking through the vineyard under a sky full of stars, William's jacket draped over her shoulders against the cool night air. This is perfect, Camilla sighed, leaning into his warmth. I feel like I'm in a fairy tale. Even the scary parts? William asked, and something in his tone made her look up at him. What scary parts? William stopped walking, turning to face her in the moonlight. The part where I tell you that my family doesn't just own vineyards and art galleries, he said carefully. The part where I tell you that the Ashworth name comes with complications. What kind of complications? William ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly nervous again. The kind where my great-grandfather made some questionable alliances during World War II. The kind where there are stolen artworks in our collection that we've been trying to return to their rightful owners for decades. The kind where my engagement to Sophia wasn't just about social expectations, it was about covering up a scandal that could destroy my family's reputation. Camilla felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying that the book I'm writing isn't just about art history. It's about provenance research. I'm trying to identify and return artwork that my great-grandfather acquired through less than legitimate means during the war. Stolen art, Camilla said faintly. Art taken from Jewish families fleeing the Nazis. Art bought from dealers who weren't asking questions about where it came from. Art that should have been returned decades ago but got buried in bureaucracy and family shame. Camilla sank onto a stone bench, trying to process what he was telling her. The foundation work, she said. The arts education programs are part of our attempt to make amends, but it's not enough. I want to do the right thing, even if it means giving up millions of dollars worth of art. Even if it means tarnishing the family name. And Sophia? Sophia's family has a similar situation. Our marriage would have united two families with shared secrets. Mutual protection. Camilla looked up at him, seeing the pain and guilt written across his features. Why are you telling me this? Because I love you, William said simply. Because you deserve to know what you're getting into. Because if we're going to do this, really do this, you need to understand that being with me means being part of a complicated history. How complicated? William sat down beside her, taking her hands in his. There's going to be a story in the Chronicle next week. An investigative piece about families who profited from Nazi-looted art. We're mentioned prominently. Camilla felt like she'd been punched. Next week? The reporter contacted me last month. I've been cooperating with the investigation, providing documentation of what we know. But when the story breaks? William shook his head. It's going to be ugly. Protests, boycotts, death threats probably. Anyone associated with our family is going to be scrutinized. Including me. Including you. If you're working for us, if you're with me, you'll be part of the story whether you want to be or not. Camilla was quiet for a long moment, staring up at the stars and trying to sort through her emotions. This was exactly the kind of complication she'd sworn to avoid after Marcus. Getting involved with someone whose life was about to explode in scandal was the definition of terrible timing. But looking at William, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, the way he was bracing himself for her to walk away, she realized something important. You could have hidden this from me, she said finally. I thought about it, William admitted. But you asked for honesty, complete honesty. And you're trying to do the right thing, with the art, with the investigation. I'm trying. It might not be enough, but I'm trying. Camilla studied his face in the moonlight, thinking about everything she'd learned about him over the past week. His kindness to her that first day at the cafe. His devotion to his grandfather. His passion for preserving history while acknowledging difficult truths. His willingness to risk everything to make amends for his family's past. You know what I think? She said finally. I'm afraid to ask. I think you're brave. I think you're doing something incredibly difficult because it's the right thing to do, even though it would be easier to just stay quiet. And I think that if I walk away now because things might get complicated, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. William's expression shifted from resignation to hope. Are you saying... I'm saying that I'd rather face a scandal with you than be safe without you. Camilla reached up to cup his face with her hands. I'm saying that love is supposed to be brave, right? And if I'm falling in love with you, which I am, then I want to fall all the way. William's kiss was answer enough. It was desperate and grateful and full of promise, and when they finally broke apart, Camilla felt like she could face anything as long as they faced it together. So what happens now? She asked. Now, William said, standing and offering her his hand. We go back to the house. We tell my parents that you're staying. And tomorrow, we figure out how to weather the storm together. Together, Camilla repeated, liking the sound of that. Together, William confirmed. Though I should probably warn you, dating a scandal-plagued heir to a complicated fortune isn't exactly a typical romance novel scenario. Camilla laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. Good thing I never wanted typical, she said, taking his hand and letting him lead her back toward the house where warm light spilled from the windows and the promise of a complicated but beautiful future awaited them. As they walked through the vineyard under the stars, Camilla couldn't help but think that maybe the universe's sense of humor wasn't cruel after all. Maybe it was just setting her up for the greatest love story of her life, even if it came with a side of international art scandal. San Francisco Chronicle Building. Thursday morning 1 week later. The headline was, Everything William Had Feared, and Worse. Blood Money, How San Francisco's Elite Families Built Fortunes on Nazi-Looted Art. Camilla stared at the newspaper on her desk. William's family photo prominently displayed above the fold alongside the Blackwells and two other prominent families. The article was thorough, devastating, and unfortunately, completely accurate. Her phone had been ringing nonstop since dawn. Reporters, curiosity seekers, and at least 3 people claiming to be distant relatives of Holocaust victims. Outside the Ashworth mansion, a small crowd of protesters had gathered with signs reading, Return the art and justice for victims. How are you holding up? Sophia asked, appearing in the doorway of Camilla's office with 2 enormous cups of coffee and a box of pastries from the French bakery down the street. "I've been better," Camilla admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "William's been in meetings with lawyers all morning. His grandfather is not handling this well." "And how are you handling it?" Camilla considered the question. A week ago, she'd been a struggling gallery assistant whose biggest problem was an ex-fiancé with commitment issues. Now she was romantically involved with a man whose family was front-page news for all the wrong reasons. "I keep thinking I should be more freaked out," she said finally. "But honestly, I'm just worried about William. He's been working toward this moment for months, but now that it's actually happening, he's second-guessing himself. He's blaming himself for everything. The family's past, the timing, the impact on people like me who got caught in the crossfire." Camilla picked at a croissant, her appetite non-existent. "I found him at 5 this morning sitting in the garden, staring at nothing." Sophia studied her friend's face with the keen attention of someone who'd known her since freshman year. "You love him," she said. It wasn't a question. "Completely," Camilla admitted. "Which is either the best timing or the worst timing in the history of timing." "Well," Sophia said with a grin, "you never did anything the easy way." Their conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Whitmore appearing in the doorway, looking unusually flustered. "Ms. Rodriguez-Blake, there's a reporter from Channel 7 at the front gate demanding to speak with you. I've told security not to let anyone through, but she's quite persistent." "Me?" Camilla's stomach dropped. "What does she want with me?" "Apparently someone told her you're Mr. Williams' companion. She seems to think you might have insights into the family's inner workings." Mrs. Whitmore's tone suggested exactly what she thought of sensationalist journalism. "I'll handle it," Camilla said, standing up. "Where's William?" "Still in the study with the lawyers and Mr. Charles. Shall I tell him?" "No, don't interrupt. I can deal with one pushy reporter." But when Camilla reached the front gate, she realized the situation was more complicated than one pushy reporter. A small crowd had gathered, protesters, news crews, and what appeared to be genuine victims' families, holding photographs and documents. At the center of it all was a woman in her 70s, holding a photograph of a young couple and speaking to a Channel 7 reporter. "This painting hung in our apartment in Vienna," the woman was saying, her accent still faintly European after decades in America. "My parents loved it. They saved for 2 years to buy it. When we fled in 1938, we had to leave everything behind." Camilla's heart clenched as she recognized the painting in the photograph, a small landscape that hung in the mansion's library. She'd admired it just that morning. The reporter noticed Camilla approaching and immediately pounced. "Ms. Rodriguez-Blake." "Jessica Chen, Channel 7 News. Can you comment on the allegations against the Ashworth family?" Camilla looked at the elderly woman still clutching the photograph, then at the camera pointing at her face, then at the crowd of people who'd been hurt by choices made decades before she was born. She thought about William, torturing himself with guilt over sins that weren't his. She thought about the foundation work, the arts education programs, the months he'd spent cooperating with investigators because it was the right thing to do. And she thought about love, real love, which meant standing up for the people you cared about, even when it was complicated. "The Ashworth family has been cooperating fully with Provenance researchers for over a year," she said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They've voluntarily provided documentation about their collection and are committed to returning any artwork to its rightful owners." "But they profited from stolen art for decades," the reporter started. "They're making it right," Camilla interrupted firmly. "And if you want to talk about stolen art, maybe you should also talk about the millions of dollars they've donated to Holocaust education and survivor services. Maybe you should talk about the fact that William Ashworth could have kept quiet about all of this, but chose transparency instead." The elderly woman stepped forward, studying Camilla's face. "You work for them?" she asked gently. "I work with them," Camilla corrected. "And I've seen how seriously they take the responsibility of returning what was stolen. If you have documentation about specific pieces, I'd be happy to put you in touch with their legal team." "My name is Ruth Goldberg," the woman said. "That painting in the photograph, Do you know if they still have it? Camilla's heart ached for the pain in Ruth's eyes. I think so. Would you like to come inside and discuss it properly, away from the cameras? Ruth looked surprised. You would do that? Of course. The reporter tried to follow them through the gate, but Camilla firmly declined further comment and led Ruth up the driveway toward the house. This is beautiful, Ruth said softly, looking around at the gardens. My parents would have loved this place. They always dreamed of having a garden. Camilla found herself blinking back tears as she led Ruth to the morning room, where Mrs. Whitmore immediately appeared with tea and the kind of gentle hospitality that came from decades of experience. Mrs. Goldberg, Camilla said gently, would you tell me about your parents? For the next hour, Ruth shared her family's story. Her parents had been art dealers in Vienna, forced to flee when the Nazis arrived. They'd managed to get to America but never recovered financially or emotionally from losing everything they'd built. The painting, Ruth said, showing Camilla the photograph again, was the first piece they bought for their own collection. Not to sell, just to have something beautiful in their home. My mother used to say it reminded her of the countryside where she grew up. Camilla studied the photograph, her heart breaking for this woman who'd lost so much. Would you like to see it? She asked softly. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. It's really here? I think so. Let me check. Camilla found William in the study, still surrounded by lawyers and documents. He looked up when she entered, and she could see the stress and exhaustion written across his face. There's someone here you need to meet, she said quietly. 20 minutes later, William was sitting across from Ruth Goldberg in the library, the small landscape painting between them. Ruth was crying silently, reaching out to touch the frame with shaking fingers. It's the same, she whispered. Exactly the same. Mrs. Goldberg, William said gently, this painting belongs to you, to your family. We'll arrange for its return immediately. Just like that? Ruth looked at him with amazement. Just like that? It should never have been separated from your family in the first place. Ruth was quiet for a long moment, studying William's face. You know, she said finally, after the war, my parents could have been bitter. They could have spent their lives hating the people who took everything from them. But they chose to focus on building something new instead. They'd be proud of what you're doing. William's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, he said simply. That means more than you know. As they made arrangements for the painting's return, more families began arriving at the mansion. Word had spread through the victims' community that the Ashworths were genuinely committed to restitution, and by evening, a line of people stretched down the block, not protesters but families seeking answers about lost heirlooms and artwork. Camilla found herself coordinating between the legal team, the families, and the media circus outside. It was chaotic and emotionally exhausting, but also strangely hopeful. For every angry protester, there was a family like the Goldbergs, grateful for the chance to reclaim their heritage. It was nearly midnight when the last visitor left, and Camilla finally found William alone on the terrace, staring out at the city lights. How many paintings? She asked, settling beside him on the stone bench. 17 that we can definitively trace to stolen collections, William said quietly. Worth about $12 million, give or take. And you're returning all of them? Every single one, along with monetary compensation where possible. William turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. The board of directors is meeting tomorrow to discuss my future with the foundation. There's a good chance I'll be asked to step down. And if you are? Then I'll start over. Maybe teach, maybe continue the research independently. I'll figure it out. Camilla studied his profile in the moonlight. Any regrets? About the restitution? None. William was quiet for a moment. About getting you involved in all this? Every day. Hey, Camilla said, turning to face him fully. Look at me. When he met her eyes, she saw guilt and exhaustion and love all tangled together. I chose this, she said firmly. I chose you, knowing it would be complicated. I chose us, knowing it would be difficult. And I'm choosing us again right now, knowing it's going to continue being messy and public and probably scandalous for a while. Why? William asked, his voice rough with emotion. Because, Camilla said, reaching up to cup his face with her hands. I've been thinking about something Ruth said today, about her parents choosing to build something new instead of staying bitter about what they'd lost. And I think that's what love is. It's choosing to build something beautiful together, even when the world is complicated and scary and full of people who want to tear you down. William leaned into her touch, closing his eyes. I love you, he said simply. More than I thought it was possible to love someone. I love you too, Camilla replied. All of you. The complicated family history, the noble intentions, the terrible timing, everything. When William kissed her, it tasted like promises and new beginnings. When they finally broke apart, Camilla rested her forehead against his. So what happens now? She asked. Now? William said. We figure it out as we go. Together. Together, Camilla agreed, liking the sound of that more every time she heard it. 1 year later, Ashworth Foundation Gallery, San Francisco. The opening night of Recovered Returning Art to Its Families was everything Camilla had hoped it would be. The gallery was packed with families who'd been reunited with their artwork, scholars who'd assisted with the research, and community members who'd supported the restitution efforts. I can't believe you pulled this off, Sophia said, appearing at Camilla's elbow with champagne and a proud smile. A year ago you were dodging reporters and now look at this. Camilla looked around the gallery, where each returned piece was displayed alongside the story of the family who'd reclaimed it. The Goldberg landscape had place of honor near the entrance, accompanied by a photograph of Ruth with her parents and a small placard explaining their story. We pulled it off, Camilla corrected, glancing across the room to where William was deep in conversation with a curator from the Holocaust Museum. This was definitely a team effort. And the other announcement? Sophia asked with a knowing grin. What other announcement? Don't play dumb with me, Camila Rodriguez Blake. That rock on your finger wasn't there last week. Camilla looked down at the vintage engagement ring on her left hand, a family heirloom that had actually belonged to William's grandmother, not acquired through any questionable means. William had proposed 3 days ago in the vineyard at Napa, in the exact spot where she'd decided to choose love over safety. We haven't told anyone yet, Camilla said. We wanted to get through tonight first. Well, I'm incredibly happy for you, Sophia said, squeezing her arm. Even if you did choose the most complicated man in San Francisco to fall in love with. The heart wants what it wants, Camilla replied, watching as William excused himself from his conversation and began making his way toward her. Indeed it does, said a familiar voice behind them. Camilla turned to find Victoria Hawthorne approaching, resplendent in purple silk and looking extremely pleased with herself. Victoria! Camilla hugged the older woman warmly. I'm so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it for the world, darling. This whole endeavor has been remarkable. And that young man of yours. Victoria gestured toward William, who was now close enough to hear the conversation. He's turned into quite the crusader. Victoria, William said, kissing her cheek. Thank you for coming. And for everything you've done to support the project. Nonsense. I should be thanking you for providing me with the most romantic story I've witnessed in decades. Victoria's eyes sparkled with mischief. A fake kiss leading to true love. Family scandals overcome by moral courage. Art returned to its rightful owners. It's like something out of a novel. Real life tends to be messier than novels, Camilla pointed out. My dear, Victoria said with a laugh. The best love stories always are. Speaking of which, when are you going to make an honest woman of her, William? William and Camilla exchanged glances, and Camilla could see him trying not to smile. Actually, he said, reaching for Camilla's hand and lifting it so the ring caught the gallery lights. That's already been taken care of. Victoria's delighted shriek was loud enough to turn heads throughout the gallery. I knew it, she exclaimed, grabbing them both in an enthusiastic hug. I knew from that first night at the gala that you two were destined for each other. Oh, this is wonderful. We must plan an engagement party immediately. As Victoria began making elaborate plans for their future, Camilla caught William's eye and saw her own happiness reflected there. A year ago, she'd been a woman whose biggest relationship had ended via text message, working in a dead-end job and wondering if she'd ever feel truly alive again. Now she was engaged to a man who'd literally bid $100,000 rather than let his ex-fiancée win a weekend with him. A man who'd chosen moral courage over family reputation. A man who looked at her like she was the most important thing in his world. No regrets? William asked quietly as Victoria continued her enthusiastic planning. About fake kissing a stranger in a coffee shop and accidentally falling in love with my boss? Camilla considered the question. Not a single one. Good, William said, bringing her hand to his lips and pressing a soft kiss to her engagement ring. Because I have a feeling our life together is going to be wonderfully, beautifully complicated. Good thing I like complicated, Camilla replied, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him properly. Around them, the gallery buzzed with conversation and laughter, filled with people celebrating art returned and families reunited. But for Camilla, the most important thing in the room was the man holding her hand, the one who'd taught her that the best love stories weren't the simple ones. They were the ones where you chose each other again and again, through scandals and headlines and complicated family histories. They were the ones where fake kisses became real promises, and where taking a risk on love turned out to be the smartest decision you'd ever made. Even if it did start with accidentally accosting a stranger in a coffee shop. The end.